Have you ever looked at your paycheck and thought the only way to make more money was to work more hours? Another evening, another Saturday, maybe a second job after the first one ends. It makes sense, because more hours usually mean more money, right away. And when bills are close behind you, that becomes the only answer you keep reaching for. But sometimes, the problem isn't a lack of options. It's that you've been solving it the same way for so long that you stop questioning it. That was Logan at 28. When his overtime started disappearing, he didn't just look for another job. He realized something uncomfortable. The same path would keep him in the same loop. So instead of chasing more shifts, he chose uncertainty. It wasn't easy, and it didn't feel safe, but it was the first real break from the cycle. What happened next didn't change his finances overnight. It changed how he saw the value of his time. Stay with me, because Logan's story isn't about a better job. It's about how staying safe can quietly keep you stuck. Logan had a reliable answer whenever money got tight. He found more hours. He worked on a finishing line at a large industrial laundry where hotel sheets, hospital linen, and uniforms moved through the building by the cartload. He had been there 4 years and made $20 an hour. His regular schedule covered the bills he expected. The problem was that some months simply cost more than others, and there was rarely much left over when they did. Most weeks, Logan picked up about 5 hours of overtime. The extra pay gave him some room, and over time he began to count on it. That was how he had handled money since his early 20s. His raises had always been small enough that he barely noticed them from one paycheck to the next. Extra hours were different. Stay late a few days, or give up part of Saturday. And the change was obvious. Over time, Logan stopped thinking of overtime as one option among several. It became the answer he reached for first. The work itself had become familiar. Logan could usually tell when one feeder was about to give trouble because the linen started pulling slightly toward one side. He knew another line disliked heavier, wetter loads. Some mornings he could hear a machine running differently before anybody called maintenance. He didn't think much about any of that. 4 years around the same equipment gave you habits. Then, the plant installed a new section of automated equipment. Management explained the change at the start of a Monday shift. Production would continue as usual, but the new system was expected to reduce some of the bottlenecks that had been creating over time. Logan heard that part clearly. The extra hours he had been counting on were about to become less dependable. There was also talk about maintenance training, because the new equipment would require more support, but Logan gave that less attention. His immediate problem was easier to understand. He needed another source of hours. A grocery store on his route home was hiring evening stockers. The schedule wasn't great, but the store wanted people who could give them 3 evenings a week and at least part of Saturday. A grocery store on his route home was hiring evening stockers. The schedule wasn't great, but the store wanted people who could give them 3 evenings a week and at least part of Saturday. Logan made a mental note to apply that night. Before he did, a new posting appeared near the time clock at work. Maintenance trainee, internal applicants welcome. Logan skimmed the requirements while waiting to clock out. Troubleshooting, basic mechanical systems, safety, some electrical knowledge. Then he reached the line saying mechanical experience was preferred. He left without thinking much more about it. Running a production line was one thing. Taking a machine apart was something else. And Logan had never been hired to do that. A couple of days later, the finishing line near his station started pulling linen to the same side again. The load had come through wetter than usual. Logan watched the sheets begin to drift. then heard the line change pitch. Soon after that, it stopped. Ray from maintenance came over. What happened before it quit? The operator told him it had simply stopped. Logan was close enough to hear, so he mentioned the heavier load and the way the sheets had started tracking off-center. Ray asked whether Logan had seen it before. Usually when the load comes through like this. Ray shut the equipment down properly and checked the feed section. A worn guide was letting the material move unevenly when the line was under more load. Logan hadn't known what part was failing. He had only noticed the pattern. When Ray finished, he asked how long Logan had been on that line. 4 years. That explains it. Logan looked at him. Ray nodded toward the machine. You know what normal looks like? That helps. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but later that week, Logan went back to the trainee posting and read the rest of it. He found the maintenance supervisor during a break and asked what the assessment actually covered. The supervisor told him it was basic. Nobody was expected to walk into a trainee job as a finished mechanic. Though the plant needed people who could show some mechanical reasoning and learn safely around industrial equipment, Logan admitted that electrical work was almost completely new to him. Then you'll probably find out where you're weak, the supervisor said. That's what the assessment is for. So, Logan applied. His result came back below the cutoff. The mechanical section had gone better than he expected. Electrical fundamentals had pulled the score down. Logan left the office disappointed, though the result also made the problem more concrete than it had been before. The supervisor told Logan the company would cover an approved basic electrical course if he wanted to try the assessment again. The plant paid the school directly for approved workers, so Logan wouldn't have to put tuition on a card and wait for reimbursement. A senior maintenance technician was planning to retire later in the year. The supervisor expected another trainee opening around then. If you still want it, work on the electrical side and try again. Logan took the course information home, spent a few days thinking about it. Taking the grocery job felt familiar. He already knew exactly what that path looked like. Finish one shift, drive to another place, work a few more hours, then do the same thing again later in the week. The class asked him to spend time without getting paid for it, and there was no promise at the end. He could finish the course and fail the next assessment anyway. Well, that was the part that made the decision difficult. For years, Logan had been quick to picture what happened if money ran short. Another repair, a rent increase, a bad month at work. Those possibilities came easily. He had spent much less time considering how his work itself could change. In the end, he enrolled. The first few weeks were harder than he expected. At the laundry, Logan rarely had to think through the basic movements of his job anymore. In class, he had to stop and work things out. Some of the diagrams looked simple after the instructor explained them, which only made Logan more annoyed that he hadn't understood them earlier. A second job would have been easier to measure. Every shift would show up on a paycheck. The course gave him no such reassurance. And yet, what kept Logan interested was what happened when he returned to work. One afternoon, Ray was tracing a fault that kept stopping a conveyor. Logan recognized part of the circuit from something they had covered in class. He stayed nearby long enough to see how Ray tested it, then asked one question before going back to his station. But this time, he understood why Ray was checking the sensor before looking farther down the machine. Small things like that began to change what Logan paid attention to during a shift. The equipment was still doing the same work it had always done. Logan was simply noticing connections that had meant nothing to him before. He started asking better questions. Ray answered when he had time. Nobody treated Logan like an apprentice yet, and he didn't hover around maintenance instead of doing his own job. Most of what he learned at work came in short pieces, between normal production problems. By the end of the course, Logan was still far from being a technician. He did, however, understand enough to know how much he didn't know. Strange how progress can look like that, doesn't it? When the senior technician's retirement date was confirmed, the plant opened another trainee position. Logan took the assessment again. This time, he passed. During the interview, the supervisor asked him about recurring problems on the production floor. That part felt easier. Logan could explain what operators noticed before a line stopped, which problems tended to repeat, and where small delays created bigger backups farther down the process. 4 years in production had given him something useful after all. He had just never thought of it as preparation for anything else. Logan got the trainee job. The pay was only a little higher than his production rate at first, so the move didn't immediately replace the overtime income he had lost. For a while, that was frustrating. He was learning more and earning less than he could have made during a busy production week with overtime. There were also days when maintenance made him feel less competent than he had on the finishing line. Ray could often hear a description of a problem and know where to start. Logan still had to work through possibilities one at a time. But the difference became clearer over the following year. On production, Logan had reached a point where another month mostly made him more efficient at work he already knew. Maintenance kept giving him problems he couldn't have handled a few months earlier. He learned the plant's newer equipment, became more comfortable with electrical troubleshooting, and gradually needed less help with routine calls. His pay moved with that progress. About 18 months after management first announced the reduction in overtime, Logan completed the trainee period and moved into the first technician level at $25 an hour. One Friday, he looked over his weekly pay and noticed something that would have mattered a great deal to him a year and a half earlier. 40 hours now brought in roughly what he used to make after adding another 5 hours to his production week. Think about that for a second. The plant still had overtime. Maintenance sometimes needed weekend coverage too, especially when equipment failed at a bad time. Logan took some of those hours. He just didn't build his normal finances around them anymore. A few weeks later, someone from his old production crew asked whether he was staying late. Logan said he was heading home. The other man joked that the maintenance rate must be nice. Logan laughed and kept walking. A year earlier, he probably would have measured the change by the extra $4 an hour. Now he thought more about what had made those $4 possible. The trainee posting had been on the same employee board he passed every day. Ray had worked in the same building for years. Logan had already spent thousands of hours around the equipment before he ever considered learning how it worked. None of those things had suddenly appeared when his overtime was cut, right? What changed was the way Logan responded to the problem. For most of his working life, a smaller paycheck had sent him looking for another shift. This time, eventually, it sent him looking at the work itself. Hours still mattered. Logan had simply stopped treating them as the only lever he had. Maybe there's something in your own life you've been approaching the same way for years, simply because that solution has always been there. It doesn't mean the old way is wrong. Logan's overtime worked. It paid him more. He just eventually realized it wasn't the only thing he could do with those hours. So before you leave, think about one problem in your life that always seems to produce the same answer. There may be another option you haven't taken seriously yet. And, well, maybe it's worth looking at. If you enjoyed Logan's story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep making stories like this, and I'd be glad to have you here for the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.